A2IM, the collective voice of independent music.
Hi everyone, welcome to the panel on new trends in commercially viable placements from A2IM. I'm Zeli from Point Records, LA-based label with a focus on international artists and the Caribbean. So we have three people on the panel today, and I'm gonna let you introduce yourselves.
I'll go. I'm Toddrick Spalding. I'm the Vice President of Music at Mob Scene. We're a theatrical marketing agency or entertainment marketing agency. I'm a 15-year veteran music supervisor. I also have my own label called Sonic Ritual, which is also an A2IM member, and a production company called C90.
I am Evelin Garcia. I am the Director of Music at Ignition Creative, who actually learned everything I know from Toddrick, who's, I guess, in that window to me.
Okay, so I'm Kat Matt. Yes, two first names. And I work at Epidemic Sound. We are a Swedish production library, and I'm head of their creative licensing here in North America.
Great to have everyone. I want to know, for the panel, what are people currently looking for in the world of sync?
I mean, I can speak to at least theatrical marketing and trailers, because that's the world I kind of live and breathe in. As far as what people are looking for, it always boils down to what works to picture and what works to reach the demographics we're trying to reach for a specific campaign. So it can change from movie to movie. But there are certain trends that seem to be where things are headed or where things are. I'm sure everyone knows about the dark covers that were a big thing for a few years, and before that there was other stuff like big choir or whatever. It seems now that, and Evelyn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like now people have the move has been like being a trailer and doing all the things that a trailer does structurally, but not feeling like trailer music.
Yeah.
So like being much more organic to feeling like organic music and not relying on big trailer drums or big rises or a lot of the stuff that the tricks of the trade that we've historically used. And so I found that like when we're doing like say a custom overlay for a pop song, that the trend is now to use instrumentation to augment that feels more natural to the music. People seem to be pushing against that like super huge maximum epic trailer thing and more into some more subdued and like nuanced kind of music composition. And also I think there's a move to simplifying. Like it seems like a lot of people are asking for like music that's built around, very similar, like very like small instrumentation or simple arrangement, like one string line that kind of guides the entire piece or one single piano note that guides the entire piece, and kind of less into that whole kitchen sink that I think trailers have kind of been known for since they started, So that's kind of interesting. But that's what I would think that currently people are looking for.
So coming from trailers, the exact same thing that Toddrick said, I 100% agree. I think before it was really, really big, epic anything, whether it was, an epic trailer library track or it was like this big hip hop song. Everybody always references like Kanye's Black Skinhead and stuff like that. But it has seemed to be like recently everybody sort of like scaled back and everything is now more minimal, and it's not so much about as, I guess, kind of like hitting you over the head with the emotion you're supposed to feel, but having that emotion creep up on you in a more minimal, organic way.
That said, too, there's always those movies that come where it still requires to go huge and be this giant thing. I mean, sometimes, there's definitely been an opening, I think, for like independent music in trailers, because I think the shift has gone from known artists to like tone and like having music kind of be like, it has to feel right has been more of an emphasis. But even with that said, there's some properties you'll get on where like they just like eat music. Like we were on Justice League and it was like we would put all these really cool songs up against it and they just would get like just basically evaporate or like be like the images were just too big and iconic. Like when you have like Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, like putting not a lot of stuff holds up and stands up to that material. So then we found that if we were putting stuff that was giant, like Jay-Z or the Beatles, stuff that was just like truly iconic, it could kind of balance the weight of these giant images. And so even though typically, like Evelyn's saying, like the trends are going smaller and like being more open to just sound or being open to like tone, there are certain projects and campaigns where you kind of are forced almost because the imagery is so huge to have to go maximum, you know?
Cool. Pat?
I think I could speak. I don't really focus on a lot of trailers, unfortunately, but I am working a lot with a lot of advertising agencies. So the one thing that I will say is very similar to what Evelyn was saying. I do get a lot of references for Black Skinhead. That does happen still. I think it has scaled back where they will like, we don't need anything that's a little bit too industrial, but we do want to keep the drums and like something that's like really percussive, that's like easy to cut to for like a 15-second or a 30-second spot. I think currently right now, unfortunately, the trend that I was seeing in my inbox for music searches was piano music for a lot of the COVID ads. I think that is finally over with. I think that brands are going back and like trying to figure out like what they want to say now during this time. So I'm actually starting to get a lot more music searches that are like not as like sad piano music focused, and a lot more of what I was seeing before, which the trends were, I think with TikTok happening, I've been getting a lot of like TikTok kind of references with, you know, really like pop and like hip hop kind of leaning songs with vocal chops in it. And then, you know, I think like female hip hop is also trending too. It's a little bit harder for us to pitch to, only because like they will say, but we want female hip hop, but we also have a lot of VO. So then we went instrumentals. So that's kind of what I'm seeing on my end.
Yeah, and I always find that clients always say they want hip hop, and then when you actually send them instrumentals of hip hop, they're like, well, there's no music because it's all beat and static, and where the changes. Like, all the dynamics happen in the vocals. So
Exactly.
yeah. And it's also funny too, because clients will say, oh yeah, we want like TikTok and like new hip hop stuff. And then you play them new stuff and they're like, well, this is so minimal and there's no beats and it's all soft. And like, I'm like, well, you think of hip hop as still 1998. And like, you know, like it's not
like we want those horns.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think it's interesting. I think there's a big opening for people to do production where they can like, you know, kind of amplify the sounds that are happening now from a lot of the guys that are doing the more like emo hip hop stuff and the cloud rap stuff and all that, and doing like taking those like trap beats and those more like vocal things, but kind of like beefing up the production to give it some dynamics, because that would be huge if we had new hip hop that did that kind of stuff and had that movement. I guarantee people will be using it. Because, like she said, editors are the end client. You know, like they have to be able to cut to it, and that's the big piece of it. It's like, how do you tell a narrative story when the music's static? It's like really hard to do that.
I think another thing too is like with that being said, like a lot of the hip hop that they're looking for, they're like, well, you need a spot that's like high energy hip hop, and then you give them that high energy hip hop, and a lot of it relies on the vocals.
Yeah.
You take that away, and then you have the trap beat, and then they're like, well, we need something that's like faster in BPM. I'm like, well.
That's usually when like the overlay kicks in.
Yep.
Yeah.
So with everybody like spending more time at home, and obviously, you know, people being on TikTok a lot, Twitch, have you guys seen that's affected the like placement opportunity, like what people are looking for right now with COVID? Like you mentioned the piano music. I've heard from other music supervisors that they're getting a lot of requests for ambient, that ambient has gone off the roof, that classical has been streaming like I think 25% more or something like that in the last 3 months.
Well, I can say from in regards to like sync, I think I actually have gotten a couple like meditation app kind of like spots. So we actually have a lot of meditation music as well. So that's been easy. But in terms of like what people are streaming, I think it's different with sync because
with sync, because what is since people are basically advertisers are looking for music kind of to quell. That's what I've heard from music supervisors, like to quell everyone and, you know, sell their cleaning products. Like I heard somebody say something like Clorox is, you know, we never get any like I heard a music supervisor say that they were having to get music for cleaning companies, that wasn't really a demographic for them before, and that.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen one, our business has slowed down exponentially because there's no production happening right now. And movie theaters aren't open, so there's not really a place to play a trailer. But I definitely see the messaging has been like, you know, a lot of the studios are putting out messaging of like, you know, we'll be there for you when you're ready to come back to the theaters, and we're all family, and like that's a lot of the sentiment right now is a lot of like feel good, which, you know, then musically when we're pulling music for that is stuff like she's saying, like pianos and emotional and like heartfelt, inspirational. So, and I think that's going to continue as we get through this. Stuff, you know.
Well, to add another perspective to that, for me, it's actually been the opposite. So working with our streaming clients, it's been more so about really over the top, like happy, upbeat music. Just because I guess like on the flip side of that, where we're working on advertising shows and films and all that stuff, obviously like the films have paused, but with the streaming services right now where everybody is tuning in to like Love is Blind and 90 Day Fiance and all of those like just random shows to help you unplug, our clients are asking us for just like really crazy, over the top, happy, wild music. And I think that maybe there's a divide between right now. I think that there's two things that are like trending. It's either sort of that like feel good stuff, and it sort of depends on the product that you are advertising, or if it's like a cleaning product or, you know, I've seen a lot of car commercials where a lot of people are just like, you can come in and get your service and it's all like hands off and you don't have to talk to anybody, and like comforting people. And then there's also the side of entertainment that is trying to be like what entertainment traditionally is a form of distraction from what's going on. So I feel like it's going one of two ways, where it's either really minimal and soft and emotional, or it's like really wild and crazy and over the top fun to just kind of help you forget and take a break from what's going on.
So where are you getting the most demand in placements right now? Like Todd, you said that it's kind of slowed down. Movie theaters are not operating right now. Where are the requests from?
Agencies like ours are in a weird spot right now because most of our work is like specifically mob scene. Like our creative is either on the theatrical side doing trailers, or a massive part of our business is doing behind the scenes, like bonus content, making ofs. Like we'll send a crew to a set and interview the DP and interview special effects guys and all that kind of stuff. And none of those productions are happening right now. So a big part of our industry is kind of on hold right now, waiting. You know, we got good news that movies are starting to get scheduled and that they're looking at opening theaters places, and that's all. We all watch the trades every day. Hopefully everything's going to start going back, but there's not a lot of stuff going right now. I mean, I think the agencies that are working on movies that were already shot in preparation for what's going to come. But I do think that there's going to be a massive boom once this all once everything gets back to normal, whatever normal looks like, whether that's streaming or whether that's theaters opening, there'll be a shift. And once that kicks in, all these productions that have been on pause are going to ramp up. And there's going to be a lot more marketing, a lot more stuff. So there'll be a ton of opportunity for music, I think, in the coming months. So I think it feels like something where like everyone's just kind of like holding on in a pause and like, you know, circling the wagons until it kind of opens up again. At least for us.
I second everything that he said. Like for theatrical agencies, our theatrical work has definitely dwindled down because nobody is on set producing, nobody is going to theaters to watch these trailers. So at Ignition, what we've been really working on is everything that we were working on that was slated to come out this year has just been halted and put on pause until, it's safe for everybody to go back out. But we have like a handful of films, like Toddrick said, that were slated to come out in 2021 that had already been produced, that the production was wrapped up and they were in the final stages and starting to get the marketing going. So we have a handful of those keeping us going. And then we also have streaming, which is definitely, it's not something that we worked on a ton before, but it's sort of starting to ramp up. So that may be a new normal as well. But yeah, we're also just kind of waiting with bated breath, making sure that we're all reading the trades, trying to keep up with I heard that not in the States, but in other countries, they're starting to open up production. So some studios are considering going out there. And, that's all really good news for us because like what he said is once those productions fully open back up, it's going to be like a waterfall worth of work because people are going to be excited to be able to go back out and get their life back to normal, whatever that may be. And again, entertainment has always been such a big, important part of helping people get through, really hard times. So I think once we're able to get productions going, there's going to be a lot more room for placements and a lot of artists are going to have a lot of really wonderful opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially because the studios, they're all hurting and they're going to, they're going to be rushing to get as much material out as possible to get, they're going to try to make the money. So it feels like we're on the precipice of a really big rush. So it could be an exciting thing, I hope.
Yeah, I think it'll be definitely exciting too, because again, speaking only from theatrical marketing, because that's the world that I live in, but there's so many great releases that were put on pause and also a lot of great movies that were about to start production, like huge movies. So again, once that's all up and going, studios are going to be so stoked to just get the ball rolling and to get those films out, to start, getting work out, getting people out. So I hope it's going to be a really exciting time. I'm really hopeful for that.
I think for me, I have had successful placements with a lot of, like during the trend of the sad piano music that was happening, it was like a lot of pharma ads and then a lot of like medical ads. But currently what I've been seeing too, I think the trend has changed and it's shifted and now it's a lot more of a positive like outlook. And I think a lot of like retail has been up as well because I think people are like shopping at home. So I've been seeing a lot of that, those searches coming into my my inbox. Also, like a lot of placements with food, like with different brands that are in fast food and that are also delivery companies.
I want to talk about Twitch a little bit. A lot of people are on it. There's a lot of live streams on it, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of gaming, like gamers. Do you all get a lot of requests for gaming? Is it something that any of you can talk about?
Ignition has a small gaming department that we had just kind of started right when all of this happened. So we've worked on a couple of things with Riot Games, but that's about it. It hasn't been anything crazy major, and Riot specifically only has their one game, and they're very, 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 very protective of that entity and what music looks like for it and all of this stuff. And within that game, they've created this world where they have artists within the game that create music, and they have concerts within there that aren't, I don't want to call them not real artists, but they live in the world of the game. So they're very attached to that, and that's kind of what we've been using is the artists that they've created for the world of the game. But outside of that, we haven't done a ton of stuff. I know like E3 was coming up, and that's usually when all of the game trailers sort of are being worked on. Usually it starts, I want to say in like March, April, May, which is when we were all in pandemic, and still are. But with E3 being paused and kind of turned digitally, there's been a ton of stuff that's been changed. So we actually halted our game trailers for them, and now they're asking for streaming trailers. So like they're asking us what we're working on. Like Amazon, Netflix, and Hulu have asked us to work on E3 trailers for them for, upcoming seasons of shows and new shows that they're announcing, which I thought is kind of interesting. It's taken a shift from games to using E3 as a way to market upcoming releases.
I only done a handful of game stuff when I was freelancing, and it doesn't seem like it's. I mean, I think everything's slowed down because of everything, but it doesn't. It seems like my kid plays video games nonstop, and it seems like there's always a new thing on Fortnite or a new all that stuff seems to be exploding. So I don't know how this really stops. I mean, everyone who's playing video games is at home anyway, so I don't know how that's. If the consumption is changed at all. If anything, it's probably increasing for games, I'd imagine. I know for sure it's increasing for streaming because that's where everyone's at.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think Switches are super popular. I am guilty of playing Animal Crossing for way too many hours. And I actually am also really interested to find out from people who do work in games how that's going, because I kind of I'm not a gamer at all by any means, but I've adapted and now I'm super into games. But I've learned from word of mouth from friends and stuff like that who are really into the gaming world. So I'd be curious to know how video game companies are using this time to market, and whether it is, they're saving money and knowing that their hardcore gamers are out there sort of speaking their gospel to their friends and allowing it to be word of mouth, or if they are having advertisements and stuff, because I haven't really seen a lot of new game trailers outside of the Call of Duty trailer, but that's just me.
Same thing. I haven't really seen much. And in terms of me doing music searches for that, that's not my scope.
Okay. So speaking of advertisements, now that we're moving away kind of from, cable TV subscriptions and into more subscription-based services like Netflix, Hulu. How are you all adapting to less advertisements in these platforms and in the streaming services?
For our industry, I know it's a little bit of a struggle because traditionally our whole industry is built on theaters and built on captive audience, and there was already a trend over, once Netflix and all these streaming services started, it gave the digital groups that all of our clients became a little more powerful. Their voice got heard a little louder than traditionally. And it's changed the way that we look for music. It's changed the way that trailers are structured. Historically, you have a captive audience in a theater that you've got them for 2 minutes, 30 seconds, and they can't go anywhere. They're stuck watching the thing. You have a 30-second TV spot, you have 30 seconds. They are watching that show because it's on TV. Now the viewer, the consumer, has the power to click something else. So it changes the way that that music's structured and that advertising is structured when it comes to entertainment marketing. Typically now we're looking at getting someone's attention within the first 4 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, because those are all clickable moments where if you don't catch them right away, they're going to go on to the next thing and you're trying to, get eyes. So
yeah,
that changes what music structurally has to do in those moments where we could have been laid into a scene and done a real cool, pad or, cinematic little build up thing that was kind of arty and, and small and all that kind of stuff. Now you're trying to grab someone's attention right away. So it changes the dynamic of what the music can do and structurally. That's the biggest shift I've seen since the stuff went that way. The control is in the viewer's hand now.
I 100% agree with that. I mean, it's hard to get somebody's attention basically within a 5-second time span and keep that going every 5 seconds. It's one thing after the other, whereas before you could really let the music tell a story and build up that emotion, whereas now it has to hit you immediately. Or, if right now that people are at home and they're watching things on YouTube, they can click skip the ad and you skip a complete trailer. Or on Netflix, you can, start watching the trailer in the beginning, but then you don't have to watch it at all. You can read the description and just click play. The only thing that I think has a semblance of what cable used to be right now is Hulu, and that's depending on the subscription you have, because there are some, shows that you watch and they play 2 ads and you can't click out of it. But I don't know how much longer that is going to last, because you can go on Netflix and HBO Max and Amazon and not have to watch a single ad. So I think probably sooner than later, Hulu is going to get rid of that. Probably increase their subscription fee or whatever. I know it's in tiers right now, but it's a really interesting, weird time to think about that too, because we are in a pandemic and people can't go out and be forced to watch this 2.5-minute trailer, and everybody is taking media so quickly.
And the other thing too, like just even on the, like how the sausage is made side of it too, is like, because there's less marketing, stuff, like then we have to do like to make the same amount of money we would have made on a campaign for a big studio, we have to do more work than we used to have to do.
Yeah.
Or, to equal the amount of money. So you have to do more spots and more stuff. So yeah, that's that's one of the things too. It's like there's a pressure on everybody to kind of like find more ways to work and more work on more streaming stuff, bring in video game company parts of it, do more social media stuff for celebrities. There's like all these different kind of angles that people have to start doing.
Yeah, the social media thing I think is actually something really important too. Is we've definitely been asked to do more like 5 and 10-second Instagram and Facebook spots, which for me is something really wild and different, because we're used to working with 30-second spots, 60-second spots, 90-second spots, and 2.5-minute spots, and now we have to tell a story within 5 seconds, and sometimes it's just really wild and crazy. And to touch on what Toddrick said, it's, you have to do probably like 20 Instagram spots to be the amount of like what one 30-second spot would have paid us. So there's definitely a lot of pressure in that as well.
Pat?
Yeah, I could see the same thing about the 6-second spots for Instagram and all the other socials, but everything else echoing everything that they've said.
All right. Well, to wrap up, what are the trends that you see going forward?
I feel like that's kind of hard to say right now, because it's the state of the world right now is really, really not great. And I think that a lot of people feel uncomfortable advertising things right now, because it is kind of insensitive. And it's hard to predict what that's going to be, because before we at least sort of had the ability of like, okay, we're in a pandemic, we're trying to make people feel comfortable, and now we're trying to give them hope. And now we have this new problem that is a huge problem. And I think that a lot of people are focusing on that, not so much on advertising their own products or any of that stuff. So it is hard to predict where things are going to go. It's also hard to predict where things are going to go because of the pandemic. And outside of that, like, are people going to feel comfortable going back to theaters? And are we going to work in that capacity? Or is the new normal going to be, streaming services and stuff like that? And then I think it also just depends on what people are listening to right now. A lot of what we do is also based off of what current trends in radio are, because we are trying to get a huge audience between, sometimes it's like our target audience is anywhere between 15 years old and like 45. So it just really depends. I feel like predicting what's going to come right now is really, really tricky, more so than it's ever been before, just because of everything that's going on.
I'd also just say that, like, and even without the pandemic or anything going on right now, I always try to answer that question with like, the trend, no one can predict where the trend's going to be, because it's always like somebody does something different and then everyone goes, oh, I want to do that. So what I say is, instead of trying to, if you're writing for, or if you're signing artists for sync, or you're scouting people, it's like, instead of looking for what you think the next trend could be or trying to get on top of, is like, just do quality stuff that's interesting. I mean, if you're going for stuff that's going to be for use in a trailer or in promo, it's like, okay, well, it needs to be narrative, and it needs to be cinematic, and it needs to feel interesting and cool and hook you, and be like, go for whatever that thing is you're trying to sign for. I just think the music always needs to be interesting and different and creative, and not be derivative. That's the one thing. I mean, one surefire way to not be the next trend is to do something that sounds exactly like what already came out. So like, if you're signing bands that sound like Coldplay, I'd say, we already have Coldplay. We need more Coldplay. I don't, So, that's one of the things I always think. It's like, I'm always excited when I hear music that can push the envelope a little bit, and inch and get a little more different, a little more challenging. Because like one of the great things about working in trailers as opposed to working in traditional advertising, or even in music supervision for film and TV, is that we get to play with sound a lot more. We get, like, the conversations that we have with our clients are about sound and not about song. So a lot of times we get to really push the envelope, especially when we get into like genre films like sci-fi or horror. Like, you really have a wide open palette to do anything you want. So whether that's remixing an existing piece of music, or finding some crazy German teenager who makes like weird electronic music, it's like, that stuff has just as much validity in our world as Kanye and everything else, if it sells the movie. So I'm always just saying, like, instead of thinking things of like, okay, how do we get onto a trend, or what's the next thing going to be that everyone wants, is like, just make really great stuff, and then it's undeniable, and then that's what we're going to use. So that's what I would say.
To actually touch on what you said, you taught me something when I was at Mob Scene that I always remember, in regards to like new music and new trends. You taught me that it's always about the sound of the campaign versus like that specific song. So basically, to touch on everything that Toddrick said, is something that he taught me, and something that I always remember, is what is the sound, not so much what is the song.
Pat, do you want to be the icing on the cake?
Again, echoing everything that everyone has said here, I think it's a really hard time right now trying to figure out what the next trend is, because I think everyone, instead of like looking forward to what's going on, I think everyone's a lot like what's going on right now. And like, there's like a lot of internal work happening, and internal work, like I think with a lot of people themselves, and then also within music companies. I think, just to like point out the elephant in the room with the Black Lives Matter movement and like the music industry, and like what we're doing and what we're trying to do, and to be better with our artists. And, during Blackout Tuesday, we had a conversation with a lot of our artists, and because we do pitch a lot of like hip hop music, one of my artists said something that really resonated, is like, we are a Swedish company, number one, and we are pitching hip hop music. So we are guests in the hip hop house for like our Black artists. And, I think the thing that we are trying to focus on, I think hip hop is trending, but it's a matter of like, how, as music companies, how can we be better to our artists right now? And I think that's like the main focus right now. And like, instead of like, what's the next trend, is like, how can we be better?
Well, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you, Toddrick, Kat, and Evelin for joining us. And the new trends and commercially viable syntax.